Alrighty, Shabbat Shalom. And Shabbat Shalom to all that are with us on this beautiful Sabbath day. I have a message today that I want to give because of the times we're living in. And it's called, Do You Have a Covetous Spirit? Do you have a covetous spirit? And I've talked about many times the normalcy bias. And the problem sometimes with something like this, with a topic like covetousness, is because it's so normal in the world. I think a lot of times we compare ourselves to the world and say, oh, well, I'm not as bad as, the average person out there, so I'm not that bad. But in one way or another, I do believe, even for most believers, that we are exhibiting a covetous spirit to one degree. Some people, it might be 5%. Some people, it might be 95%. So I pray that even though, we've heard this message before, that this time you listen to it a little more deeply and maybe look at ways that possibly it could be affecting you. So let's start in 2 Timothy 3. 2 Timothy 3. And talking about the times we're living in, right? But we know this, that in the last days, disastrous times will be upon us. Wow. When the Apostle Paul's writing this, you had no idea what the fulfillment of that is, but we're living it. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, braggarts, arrogant, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, wicked, without natural feeling, addicted to lust, right? So covetousness and lust are connected too. Slanderers, without self-control, savages, haters of good, traitors, hasty, boasters, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of Elohim. And that's the key a lot of times with the covetous spirit, that it's the desire of wanting something to make our life easier or more pleasure-seeking that Yahweh hasn't given us. And then it says having a form of righteousness but denying the power of it, even turn away from these. So that's what happens when you have a covetous spirit. We see it in the world. We see it with almost everything. And unfortunately, 10 years ago, I'd give messages like this, or 15 years ago, and basically say, it's only in the first world. But even in the third world, we see it today. In the technological world we live in today, where everybody is connected through the internet, right? It's like the internet is like the new Tower of Babel. We see that even in the third world, we see that people see that they want more and they want something, or they want something that somebody else has, or they want something that Yahweh hasn't given them. And they think that this is going to, give them. I'm surprised sometimes when I see brethren from third world, coming to USA for, education or this or a job. And you would think, wow, like Babylon would be the last place that somebody would want to come to. And, I'm preaching for 30 years telling the people in Babylon, look at these people in the third world, and they're the ones we should be learning from. But that's what a covetous spirit does. And we don't realize it. It's looking for something that Yahweh hasn't given us. And most of the time, it's dealing with pleasure, right? It's dealing with things. It's dealing with mammon. It's dealing with money. It certainly isn't, although at times it can be even dealing with the spirit of Yahweh, that we're coveting somebody's gift, that hasn't been given to us. So you see this at Christmas time, where people, it's all this fake stuff that's out there, and you go into a store at Christmas and they're blasting that same music, from Bing Crosby that they've been blasting for the last 70 years. But they're trying to portray an image of, goodness in the same movies that come out, and It's a Wonderful Life, and everybody's good. And believe me, there are some people that it does affect. There are people that have what they call, quote unquote, the Christmas spirit, where they try to help people that time. But it is few and far in between. But the majority of people, and even children, that are given so much and so much and so much, and they're just not satisfied. Because that's the one thing with mammon, it will never satisfy you. And the more you have, the more you want. And then whatever you want, that's the new normal to you, and then you want more from there. I remember when I was younger with cars, and you're getting this car, and then all of a sudden you want a newer car, and then a brand new car, and then not just a brand new car, but a really nice brand new car. And I remember where I got a Cadillac, and it was a gold signature series, got a real good deal on it. The car actually wasn't brand new, but it was either 1 or 2 years old. I got it 50% off. But anyway, when I got the car, the first couple of days, it was like, wow, look at this car. And then after that, it was like, okay, it's a car. It didn't really give me any lasting pleasure or lasting fulfillment because things won't do that, okay? But like I said, Christmas, we see this, people unsatisfied. It's a culture of coveting, a culture that's full of selfishness, self-seeking. It's normal for people, and they just don't see it as sin, right? At work, nobody's ever satisfied with the work they have or the position they have. They always want the one the other guy has. They want more than that. And that's why it used to be people get a job working in a factory. They work there for 25, 30 years. They get a watch, they get a retirement. Not anymore. People want to come and go because they always want more. Commercials all the time, advertising, talk shows that you see, always telling people how dissatisfied they should be. In school, the whole system of commercial Babylon, which is worldwide, right, is all toward coveting. Even religion, I mean, you look at it and always pushing toward, the prosperity gospel and all these other things. So I want to start by reading a story here from the Amish, in the Amish book, called A Spoiled Generation. And it really, it's basically apropos for this message here. So it says, several years ago, I noticed a small cartoon in the newspaper that caught my attention. It showed a picture of a living room in a typical modern home. A brightly lighted and gaily decorated Christmas tree was in one corner. A 10-year-old boy stood in the middle of the wide assortment of toys he had just unwrapped. There was an electric train piled to one side of him, a brand new bike leaning against the wall, a catcher's mitt at his feet. In his hands he held a model airplane. The room all around him was strewn with expensive toys and gifts and wrapping paper. It was a simple cartoon, but it told a complete story. He held the last gift in his hand, and he was looking around for more with a frown on his face. Under the cartoon was the caption, "You mean this is all I get?" What a spoiled child. His parents had spent a couple of $100s on several dozen toys, gadgets, and playthings. Instead of being awed and grateful, he complained because there weren't more. Instead of complaining, his eyes should have been shining and his lips saying, "You mean I get all this?" How hard it is to believe that a child could be so spoiled. The truth is that all of us have more in common with this child than we'd like to think. In a way, all of us have become spoiled children, unbelievably blessed in material things, and yet standing in the midst of plenty and waste and asking, "You mean this is all I get?" We have life rather easy compared to our forebears. They were hunted, persecuted, tortured, and killed, right? The underground congregation, read my book, The Gates of Hell Shall Not Prevail Against Her. The government passed special laws against them. We have religious freedom, and the government passes special laws in our favor. We don't expect to suffer torture or pain or punishment for our faith. Our immigrant forefathers toiled with their axes and hoes to wrest a living from thick forests and tree stump-covered clearings. We have rich dark soil, loose and fertile and productive, and teams and horses to work on it. They had to make almost everything from their axe handles to their homespun clothing. We go down to town and buy what we want. No weary hours working into the night, carving, weaving, spinning. Our forebears had a diet with little variety: corn, mush, potatoes, and meat. Our tables are loaded with delicacies they never heard of: bananas, oranges, pineapples. They wore clothing that was rough, stiff, and uncomfortable. We have super fabrics with nylon added to last longer, or Dacron to keep out the wrinkles. We have it easy. We've grown fat, soft, lazy, and spoiled. We have forgotten how to suffer, and we refuse even to be inconvenienced. Everything has to be handy. Our ancestors would walk several hundred miles to their relatives. Several hundred miles to their relatives. They would ride horseback over rough and dangerous trails, taking several weeks or months to make the trip. Today, Greyhound buses speeding over superhighways aren't fast enough for us. We want a taxi to pick us up at the doorstep and chauffeur us wherever we want to go. It's too much bother to change buses, carry suitcases, or wait in depots. Will our children in turn find it too much bother to hire a taxi and decide to buy a car for themselves so that they can get to where they like faster? It does seem to work that way. The luxuries of one generation become the necessities of the next. Very important point when it goes to coveting. Let's look at just one area of our life, our water supply. When our forebears came to this country, they likely carried their water from a spring. There were many trips for water, mornings, evenings, and even through the day. It was tiresome, sometimes time-consuming labor, but it was accepted without question because it had to be done. Gradually, as homes became more permanent, wells became common. What a luxury this must have seemed. A well within 100 feet of the house? No more long trips down the dusty, winding path for water. Now it was close, convenient, and handy. All they had to do was lower the bucket into the well and hand over hand pull up sparkling, clean, fresh water. After a generation or two, pumps came on the scene. Once again, how handy it seemed. No more straining backs and tired, aching arms, pulling up the rope to pull up a bucket of water. Just grab the pump handle and up comes the water. It was much quicker and easier. Nonetheless, what a generation thought was so easy, the next found tiring. They felt pumping water by hand was a hardship and took too long. So up went a windmill. The whole family was amazed at the utter convenience of it all. No more standing, puffing, and pumping. All they had to do was walk to the well and dip the water from a large wooden tank. It seems so much easier that this generation never imagined the next might balk at the trip to the well. But that is exactly what happened. What? Walk to the well and carry all that water? I guess not. So in goes a system of water pipes. What grand luxury. Water pumped right into the house. Water waiting and ready 24 hours a day at the turn of a spigot. Turn it open and there's water to wash the face, water to cook a meal, water to fill the tea kettle. Fill the tea kettle, did you say? What for? To heat water to wash the dishes. Guess again. That's not for me. We're the next generation. Who has time to heat water when we want it? Why, with the water heater installed, all we have to do is turn on the tap, and there's hot water like we like. That brings us up to the present. What will the next generation want? We immediately think, but hot water on the tap, that's so handy to wash dishes. We can't imagine that our children wouldn't be satisfied with that. No, of course not. Our parents couldn't imagine that we wouldn't be satisfied with their luxuries either. What we appreciate, our children take for granted. Satan likes to make us believe that if we only had this or that, we could be much happier. If only the church would allow this, we'd be satisfied. We wouldn't ask for more. We'd be content. Right. Would it really work that way? Let's look around us with our eyes open. If having an abundance of material things would bring contentment, then those who have the most should be the most contented. Who has more material things than the people of the world, right? The richest people. Anything like that they can go and buy. New cars, fancy clothes, vacations to faraway places, anything, you name it. And the world has it. And if they don't, they'll just invent it. Then are they contented? Are they satisfied with what they have? The answer is obvious. And this is written, whatever it is, 30 years ago. Let's see, 1973. This is written almost 60 years ago. And today, where we have 100 times more conveniences than when this Amish man was writing this, and we are 100 times more discontent with what we have. Are they contented? Are they satisfied with what they have? The answer is obvious. One look at the headlines of a newspaper should convince anyone. Riots, strikes, demands, boycotts, protests, marches, welfare, unrest, crime, divorces, suicides, rebellions, violence, tension. There never was a generation that had so much and appreciated it so little, and it only gets worse by every year that goes by. Young people grow up and never raise a finger to work. Still, they are dissatisfied and run away by the thousands. No, the people of the world aren't content with all the luxuries they have. Yeshua said long ago, a man's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses. The time has come for each of us to stop and ask some questions. Where are we as the plain people, right? Where are we as the people of Yahweh? Where have we come from? Where are we going? What factors have brought us to where we are today? In what ways have we suffered from too much materialism? To what degree do we have the same spirit the world has, the spirit of always wanting more? What are the solutions? Perhaps the first step is to become aware of how good we really have it, and to realize what spoiled children we have become. Another thing that would help would be to renew our convictions on the teachings of the Bible, showing the importance of simple living. We need to rediscover that a simple way of life, separated and apart from the world, is indeed Yahweh's pattern for his people and 100% the pattern for the end time. However, scriptural, simple living it is not just an automatic passport to heaven. Thousands of people live simple lives with just a roof above their head and a dirt floor beneath their feet, and so few earthly possessions that they can load them into one ox cart. They may still live ungodly lives, unrighteous lives, wallowing in sin and in poverty. Hand in hand with our simple life must be a devout faith in Yahweh, honesty of conviction, and an earnest desire for the brotherhood. Olden times were more simple, but that doesn't mean that everything that is old is good. Our goal is not to pattern after the early Americans, but after the early believers, right? With the same trends and influences that have wrecked families and communities in the world around us, also destroy us in time. Will the same trends and influences that have wrecked families and communities in the world around us also destroy us in time? If we follow the same route, travel the same train, we cannot expect to arrive at a distant destination. Trailing 50 years behind the world isn't going to get us where we want to be. Those who ride in the caboose are going to the same place as the engineer. There is constant pressure in the surrounding society to conform in such areas as travel and work. Yet there is plenty of evidence, if we can see it, that such things as tractor farming and automobile travel are deadly in the long run, eroding the values of brotherhood, simple living, family sharing, and meaningful community relationship. If we allow ourselves to become like spoiled children, always wanting more and more, we cannot expect long to resist the temptation these and other modern inventions present for us and our children. If our love of ease becomes greater than our willingness to deny ourselves and to sacrifice, we are well down the road of no return, the one-way street of modernism and materialism. We don't need more conveniences as such as we need more convictions. In this world of emphasis on luxury and earthly possessions, it may be difficult to be content with little, but it is impossible to be content with much. Wow, what a great way to end that article, and how true. Written in 1973 by an elder in the Amish community, how true that is. And while today, this man who's not around would be shocked to see people with all the conveniences and still, and the addictions to it, that are there. An article just came out that they did a survey where almost 50% of people admitted they were addicted to iPhones. And that's just a survey. That's not like a medical people, really doing a study on it. It's just, if 50% of people just about are admitting to it, that tells you it's a lot more, because most people never admit to anything that they're doing. So here we are, covetous spirit, So that's why I said, and even in the third world, just recently, somebody wrote me and said that, they had given up their iPhone, and that other brethren, this is in the third world, were saying how strong you are, that you were able to do this, thinking how strong you are. Because this is in a third world country that most people just didn't want to do it. And you don't have to be strong to give it up. Maybe you have to be strong in faith, right, or discipline. But it is an addiction. And maybe you do have to be strong to a degree to get rid of an addiction. But the covetous spirit doesn't stop there. That's the problem. And when you're addicted, when you get to the point that you're addicted to all these things, you're not going to be able to give them up. It's the same way, I remember, and my dad even says it now, before my mom died, my mom smoked from the time she was like a teenager. And when she got older, she knew it was bad. She knew it was going to kill her. And she tried, but she couldn't. She wanted with all her heart to get rid of it, but she was so addicted to it, the nicotine, it's addicted to your body, that she couldn't do it. And that's why I tell people it's better not to even start these things. It's better not to get involved in it. And if you are involved, get rid of it one way or the other, because every day you go on with these worldly things, it's not going to be any easier to get rid of it down the line when it becomes life and death, right? We already know all this stuff is connected with the mark of the beast. And Yahweh has given us opportunity. He's given us community where we can help each other, where we can be accountable to each other. And I'll tell you, one thing I did last year at the Bible school, first time I did this, and I should have did it a long time ago, was make accountability partners. And almost every single person that came to that school thanked me for that. Because accountability partner helps you and pushes you where you might not, do it for yourself. So we got a big lesson ahead of us here today. But really take it to heart, because like I said, all of us to one degree or another, we're all living in the same world, we're all living in the same normalcy bias, and we're all being brainwashed by the same, GOD of this world of commercial Babylon. And again, for some of us it might only be 5%, but some it might be 95%. So we need to change, because 5% cancer, it won't be that long before it turns into 10%, 20%, 50%. You got to get rid of the cancer. So wherever you are in this, it's got to sell. And you know what's interesting? They did a study, right? And this study showed that coveting was the least confessed sin, because it's the only sin in the Ten Commandments dealing with thoughts, right? So people don't even think of it as a sin, because they're only thinking, oh boy, man, I wish I had a car like he had. Oh, look at their house. I wish I had this. People, excuse me, don't even look at it as a sin. But it's the only sin that is in the mind. Every sin starts in the mind, but this is the only sin of the mind. That's what coveting is. It's it's your thoughts, where every one is do not commit adultery, or do not lie, or do not steal. This is literally in your thoughts. So people don't even look at it that way. And coveting actually leads to so many other sins, as we're going to see here. Exodus 20 in verse 17 says, "You shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male slave, or a slave girl, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything which belongs to your neighbor." Right? So to want what is not rightfully yours, that's basically what coveting is. It's to want what is not rightfully yours. So Yahweh is the one that blesses us with all things in our life. And like the article said, he blesses us with so much more than we can ever imagine. It is almost blasphemy to not want what he's blessing us with, but want what somebody else has at that point. So it's to want what is not rightfully yours. It's not about the thing involved, right? But it's the wrong desire. So it's not necessarily coveting something that is like, evil or bad, right? But it's wanting it when it hasn't been given it to you. Like I said, singles, they want to get married. Nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. But you don't want to covet it, right? Because and appreciate it. I know, like I said, I was single until I think I was 33, 34, 33. And I knew someday I'd get married according to statistics, right? 90% or 92% of people get married. Though chances are somewhere down the line I were. So I appreciated the time I was single, because I knew when I got married, my life would be very different. And there's things I couldn't do as a married person that I was doing as a single person. So you have to appreciate where you are in life, because there's opportunities in every situation. But again, it's the spirit of the world that always wants what they don't have. So the single person wants to be married. The married person wants a child. The people that have a child, they want a second or a third child. The parents that have a bunch of children, they want grandchildren. The renter wants a house. And then once those buy a house, they want a bigger house. The unemployed want a job. Those who have a job want a better job. So it's always wanting more. It's never being satisfied with what you have. And that's part of life, like I teach at the Bible school. It's not only getting there, you got to enjoy the process. There's people in life that push goals, and their goals are just always pushing the goals, and they never enjoy getting there. And then when they hit one goal, they just want to go to the next goal. What good is that? And then the last goal, I guess, is having a golden coffin, and when you die. But life is a process, and you have to enjoy the process. That's what happiness is. It's enjoying the process. So a coveting spirit will never be satisfied with blessings, because they don't see it that way. Whatever blessing they get, they're just looking toward the next thing. They're looking to, toward what they don't have, not what they have. And again, it's your focus. Whatever you're focused on becomes most real to you. So you could be focusing on the things you have, and the things you're blessed with, and the things you have in life. And look at you. You have a wife or a husband. You have beautiful children. You have the truth of Yahweh. All these great things that you could sit there for hours and share them. And yet you'll sit there, yeah, but no. I don't have the car I want. Oh, you know how hard it is in the smaller car getting here. And that's what people do. They sit there and they focus on the one thing they don't have instead of the 99 things that they do have. Jacob 1, verse 14 and 15 says, but each one is tempted by his own lusts. He covets and is seduced by them. So lust will bring temptation, like I said, and lead to other sins. Then having conceived, lust brings forth sin, and sin being fully formed brings forth death. So the lust in the mind, right, which is sin of itself, because it's breaking one of the Ten Commandments, never stays there. That's just the beginning of it. Thought becomes action, action becomes sin, and sin becomes death. So we want to make sure that we're stopping it. We want to make sure that our focus is not on lusting the things that we're not being blessed with, but we're embracing the blessings that Yahweh is giving us. Let's go to Genesis, book of Genesis, chapter 2 and verse 9, because we see, with our first relatives, Adam and Eve, how this was the major problem that came in there, right? The deception through lust. And that's the thing. Lust is one of the most dangerous sins, covetousness and lust, because Satan can work on that, like I said, to get into other sins so easily. Where other sins maybe, like it's not as easy for him to tempt you with. But covetousness, that's what it is. It's a temptation. That's, it's giving Satan into your life when you're living this way. So Genesis 2 and verse 9, right? And out of the ground Yahweh Elohim made to spring up every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life was also in the middle of the garden, also the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Drop down to verse 16, and what does Yahweh says? And Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, saying, eating you may eat of every tree in the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you may not eat, for in the day you eat, surely you will die. So, a lot of times people seem to put the choice, like, okay, they had the choice of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil or the tree of life, and they took the wrong one. But actually, it was a bigger choice than that. There were trees all over the garden, so we don't know how many trees and how many were named. It could be hundreds of trees. But they had the choice of 99 things they could have to one thing they couldn't have. And that's what covetousness does. Covetousness, instead of looking to say, okay, I can't have up that tree in the middle of the garden, but man, I can have the 99 all around it. Nope, the covetous spirit wants the one that it can't have, and that's exactly what happened. Go to the next chapter, Genesis 3, in verse 2 and 3. And the woman said to the serpent, of the fruits of the trees of the garden we may eat, but of the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden, Elohim has said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. So they had free reign. They weren't being oppressed. They weren't being held back. They weren't being handcuffed. No, they had free reign in the garden to eat anything they wanted except the one tree, right? But what happened, verse 6, and the woman saw the tree was good for food, it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree was desirable to make one wise, and she took of the fruit and ate, and she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. So the covetous spirit, right? The covetous spirit doesn't see the 99 you can do, it sees the one that you're not supposed to do. And buy, right? It looked good, it was good for food, maybe it even smelled good, pleasant to the eyes, and desirable to make one wise. Wow, I'm going to be like Elohim. That was the lie that was told, and that Elohim was lying to them. So we see this, that there was all the trees there, but the lust, the covetous spirit was all that was needed to take of the one. And here we are. Here we are almost 6,000 years later. And that's why I said every one of us, there's not a person out there that can say that, man, nope, I know I have other problems, but no, I'm 100% that I don't have any problem with covetousness. Because everyone does to one degree or another. Like I said, sometimes even coveting a spiritual gift. Oh boy, I wish I could sing like he could. Wow, he plays the piano so beautiful. I would. That's coveting. That's coveting. Because something? I always say this, Yahweh is not barren. In every single human being that's born, you have a gift that you excel at that somebody else doesn't. That there's somebody that would look at you and say, boy, I wish I had the love that that person has. Boy, I wish I had the the love for people, or the ability they have to give that somebody, or whatever it could be. So instead of focusing on what you don't have that somebody else has, you should be focusing on what the gift you do have and building that gift. Building that gift, because that's what makes people happy. And that's why Yahweh gave us gifts. Because what are you going to be happy at? You're going to be happy at what you excel at. So, like me, I don't play the piano whatsoever. And if I was in a congregation, they said, "Oh, Elder Don, come up and do special music," right? I wouldn't be too happy at that. Because I'd be up there and I'd just be banging on those things, and it would be like, ugh, oh, I wouldn't make anybody feel happy. They'd probably be holding their ears. So that wouldn't make me happy. Why? Because I'm not making anybody else happy. But if they said, "Elder Don, will you come up and give a word, will you preach?" That's a gift that's given to me. So that since it's a gift that Yahweh's Spirit excels at, I'm going to be happy because I'm making other people happy. So that's the way you have to look at it that way. 1 Timothy 6, verse 3. 1 Timothy 6, verse 3. First Timothy 6, verse 3. It says, "If anyone teaches differently and does not consent to sound words, those of our Master Yeshua Messiah, and to the doctrine of the fear of Elohim," right, the reverence, "he is proud, understanding nothing, but harps upon the use of the word concerning doubts and arguments, and this is the cause of envy and controversy, evil speaking, evil suspicions," right, "meddling of men whose mind has been corrupted and deprived of the truth, who think that worshiping of Elohim is for worldly gain. Keep away from such people." That's basically religion, Christianity today, right? "But our gain is greater contentment, for it is the worship of Elohim." Our gain is greater contentment, right? So contentment is worship. Why? Because when you're content, you are going to be praising Yahweh. You are going to be praising Him for all the things. Yahweh is my shepherd. And every day when I walk and I pray to Yahweh as I'm walking, I always start my prayer saying, I always with all the things thanking Yahweh, and I always start with that 23rd Psalm to say, "Yahweh, you are my shepherd. You give me everything. There's nothing in this world I want. I want nothing. You've blessed me with so much that I'm content with everything. And you know what? If there's something else I need, He knows it more than I do, and He'll give it to me." That's where the faith comes in. But I am content. He is my shepherd. There's nothing that I'm thinking, boy, if my life only had this. So it's helped, because in parts of my life where maybe I thought, I could have had this, I don't even think that, because I know Yahweh is my shepherd. And I know even in times of challenges in my life, those challenges are the ones that are going to change me. So they're there for my benefit, right? So Yahweh is my shepherd. Our gain is greater contentment. It is the worship of Elohim. "For we brought nothing into the world, and it's plain, neither can we carry anything out. But with food and clothing, let us be satisfied with these," right? What more do you need? And why worry about tomorrow when tomorrow may never come? You might be dead, right? So with food and clothing, he doesn't even say shelter, let us be satisfied. "But those purposing to be rich fall into temptation and a snare and many foolish and hurtful lusts, which plunge men into ruin and destruction." Because when you're looking for mammon, not only do you covet, but you will never ever be satisfied. You never will, because whatever you get, like I said, you're going to want to go up past there. It's like authority. They say authority corrupts, and absolute authority corrupts absolutely. Because whatever authority you get, you're never going to concede an inch of it, and you're going to want to get more. So that's the way it goes with that. That's human nature. "But those purposing to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and many foolish and hurtful lusts, which plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of many is the root of all evils, by means of which some have lusted after, were seduced into the faith, and they themselves pierced through of many pains." So, very, very clearly here we see, "But you, O men of Elohim, flee these things and pursue righteousness, holiness, faith, love, patience, and meekness." So, covetous, always wanting more, will always do that, not being satisfied, to have an obsessive or envious desire. That's what it brings. And it's normal. It's normal in commercial Babylon, And like I said, it's normal even in religion. And I've mentioned this in other sermons, I chuckle when somebody will write us for the first time, it's the first time they're seeing us or getting on the website, and they'll say, send me your catalog, because that's what they're used to. They're not used to ministries. They're not used to servants of Yahweh. They're not used to he who wants to be greatest among you, be your servant. They're used to people that are marketing them, that have a catalog, a catalog, like Sears and Roebuck or something like that, right? But that's what people are used to, because that's why I said that's the normalcy bias of the world now in commercial Babylon. Ephesians 5 and verse 3. Ephesians 5 and verse 3 says, but let not fornication in all uncleanness or greediness be named among you, as is fitting for saints. Also cursing, foolish talking, or witty insults, none of which are necessary, but rather the giving of thanks. For you should know this, that no one guilty of fornication, or an unclean person, or a covetous one, who is an idolater, right? Covetousness is idolatry, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Messiah and of Yahweh. Why is it idolatry? Because you are literally putting that covetous, whatever you're coveting, you're putting it before Yahweh. And anything we put before Yahweh is idolatry. It is idolatry to always seek mammon. The Babylonian mindset, always needing more, And I've said this before in sermons. How could someone be a millionaire, right? How could someone have $1 million and wind up being broke? Because when you have the first million, you're never going to be satisfied, because you could lose that million. And now I had it and I'm going to spend half of it on a house or whatever. No, then you want the second million, and then the third and the fifth and the 10th. And that's just the way it goes. And today you have people with billions and hundreds of billions of dollars. And if you just calculate, how much money, I think they said with $1 billion, if you spent $3 million every day of your life, you'd have to live like 300 years to spend $1 billion. Spending $3 million every day of your life, something crazy like that. So, hey, or maybe it's even 10 million a day or something. I forget what it was, but in an absurd amount like that. It's a spirit of covetousness. 1 Corinthians 5 and verse 9. 1 Corinthians 5 and verse 9. It says, I wrote to you in an epistle not to associate with immoral persons, and not altogether with the fornicators of the world, or with the covetous, or with extortionists, or with idolaters, since then you must go out of the world. But now I wrote to you not to associate intimately if anyone is called a brother, and is either immoral, or a covetous one, or an idolater, like we said, or a reviler, or a drunkard, or extortionist. With such a one do not even break bread to eat. For what business is it to me judge the ones outside the congregation? But you may make judgments on those inside the congregation. But Yahweh will judge the ones outside, and you shall put out from yourself those wicked persons. So it's a serious sin, covetousness, because it's a frame of mind. It's not something that you do once. Like somebody went to a store and whatever, like his family was hungry and he stole something because he was out of work and had no money. It's a one-time thing. He regrets it. He repents, whatever. Covetousness is something that's in your mind, and it's something you live with, and it grows on itself just like a cancer does. So it's immoral and it's idolatry, because it's only self-seeking and selfish. Colossians 3 in verse 1. Colossians 3 in verse 1. He says, if then you were raised with Messiah, seek the things above, where Messiah is sitting at the right hand of Yahweh. Set your mind on the things above, not on the things of the earth, right? It's a mindset. It's a frame of mind. For you died, and your life has been hidden with Messiah in Elohim. Whenever Messiah, our life, is revealed, then also you will be revealed with him in glory. Then put to death your members which are on the earth: fornication, uncleanness, passion, evil lust, and covetousness, for these are idolatry. On account of which things the wrath of Yahweh is coming on the deeds of disobedience. So, like I said, it's a frame of mind. And you don't want to live with that frame of mind because it's horrible. Wouldn't you rather have your mind be focusing on the blessings that Yahweh have and be happy all day long? Because happiness is a state of mind. happiness is simply what you're putting your focus on, and the focus is on something good that's making you happy or something that you don't have that's making you unhappy. So it really is a state of mind, and it makes you much happier to keep that right state of mind. Idolatry and pride, to put your wants before Yahweh. 2 Corinthians 10. Well, you know what? I think I am going to skip that one right now. I'm going to go to Romans 8:28. Romans 8:28. Romans 8:28 says, "But we know that to the ones loving Elohim, all things work together for good, for those being called according to purpose." That we have to have faith in Yahweh for everything. We have to make sure that we are trusting Yahweh for things that we might need, right? So we don't have to covet them, because it's a lack of faith, really, coveting. What we have to do is trust Yahweh, that Yahweh is giving us what we need when we need it, and not to try to bless ourselves with things that Yahweh doesn't think we need. And that's why I said, coveting isn't necessarily, even if you have the money to buy something, it's a matter if you really need it. So if I have 10 coats and I buy an 11th coat, it's coveting, because I don't need the 11th coat. So it's not just wanting something that you physically can't get. It's actually taking something or buying something or getting something that you don't need, that you simply don't need. It's still coveting. It's something that you don't need. And Yahweh will bless it with all heavenly blessings that we could not even imagine, right? Because there's nothing wrong with material blessings. There's nothing wrong with that. If you look at some of the greatest men in the Bible, Job, Abraham, were some of the richest men that ever lived, because they were able to handle it, and they didn't have a spirit of coveting. And they shared their things, and they trusted in Yahweh, and they had faith. So it's not that to be blessed material-wise, there's something wrong with it. It's just we want Yahweh to be the one doing it. We want Yahweh to be the one blessing. We don't want to be blessing for ourselves. Now let's go to 2 Corinthians 10. 2 Corinthians 10. And starting in verse 12, it says, "For if the eagerness is present, it is acceptable according to what one..." I'm in chapter 8, I'm sorry. 2 Corinthians 10 and verse 12. "For we dare not rank or compare ourselves with some of those who are proud of themselves. For it is because they measure themselves by themselves that they do not understand. But we will not boast beyond measure, but according to the measure of the rule which Yahweh has distributed us, a measure to reach even unto you." Drop down to verse 17. "But the one who boasts, let him glory in Yahweh, for it is not the one who praises himself who is approved, but the one whom Yahweh commends." So, covetousness can also be being envious of somebody else, being envious of their position. You know, sometimes people come in and they're envious because they're not an elder or they're not a deacon. You know, or they, like I said, they're envious of the piano player or somebody that has a beautiful voice that can sing. So we shouldn't be envious of coveting others, because each of us has our own gift. And we have a gift that Yahweh has given to us, each of us, and we need to use that gift to His glory and not be coveting someone else's gift. That's what happened with Satan. Satan was Lucifer, you know, the covering cherub. He had all of these blessings, but his focus was not on that. His focus was on what he didn't have. He wanted to be at the throne of Yahweh. He wanted to be, you know, up top and second in the kingdom, and it wasn't for Yahweh. Philippians 3, verse 20, it says, "For our citizenship is in heaven, from where we await for a Savior, the Master Yeshua Messiah." So that's where our citizenship is. That's where our goals should be. You know, our citizenship is in heaven, not in the earth. And if your focus is on the earth, you know, and that's why I said, boy, you know, when you look at that story I read from the Amish man in the beginning, and here we are, you know, 60 years later, you know, or almost 60 years later, and how much worse things are today. If there was ever a time, you know, to come out of the society, here we are. Ecclesiastes 3, 1 and 2 and verse 6. Ecclesiastes 3, right? It says, "To all there is an appointed time, even a time for every purpose under the heavens. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pull up what is planted. Verse 6, a time to seek and a time to let wander away. A time to keep and a time to throw away. So there's a time to receive and there's a time to give. And sometimes, maybe you're a young person, and you're turning 17 and you're looking at that first car and it's not the right time. You don't have the money for it yet or whatever. But, there's a time that you'll be older and you will maybe have a car, or whatever. Like I said, the same thing with marriage. Sometimes single people, they're so worried about getting married that they're not even working on it. That's what you should be doing. You should be preparing, for the marriage, whether that's to a physical person in this life, a male or a female, or it's to Yeshua when the kingdom comes, because all of us should be working on that, right? So this is what we want to look at. There's a time for everything. There's a time to receive and there's a time to give. Happiness is not wanting more, but it's being satisfied with less. And that's the point. There was a man one time from a seminar, and he said he was dissatisfied, and they were talking to him and saying, well, why are you dissatisfied? He said, well, I only make $250,000 a year, and everybody in my circle makes $350,000 a year. And it's like, wow, talk about, sabotaging yourself. So here's a person that makes more money than 90% of the world or 95% of the world, and he's unhappy because the few people in his circle are making more than him, right? And like I said, when you're a billionaire, you can never spend that money. If you tried to spend, $5 or $10 million every single day of your life, it would be impossible. You couldn't even do it. So what's the point at that point? What is the point? You have more than you ever need. So happiness is not wanting more, but being content with less. Being satisfied with less. Yahweh is my shepherd, right? With food and clothing. I have everything I need every day. He's providing, and I don't need any more. Acts 20 and verse 35. Acts 20 and verse 35 says, I showed you all things that working in this way we ought to help those being weak and to remember the words of the Master Yeshua when he said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. And that's what gives you happiness. You get more happiness out of giving to someone else than getting something for yourself. And that's the people in this world, in commercial Babylon, that are only seeking for themselves, and then they get it and they're wondering, why ain't I happy? Why ain't I happy? I got the car I always wanted. I got this. Because when you're only seeking toward yourself, it doesn't bring true happiness. True happiness comes from giving, not just accepting. Galatians 5 in verse 16. But in order to do this, you have to surrender to Yahweh's Spirit. Galatians 5 in verse 16 says, but I say to you, if you walk in the Spirit, the lust of the flesh will not overtake you, right? So covetousness is part of the lust of the flesh. But if you're walking in the Spirit, then that's not going to happen. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit and the Spirit against the flesh. We saw it in Eden, right? With Adam and Eve and the serpent. And these are opposed to one another, so you are not able to do as you desire. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the penalty of law breaking. We have to let the Ruach guide us. We have to let the Ruach, and you have to surrender to that. And that's what Satan does, like what he did with Eve. He will work on you to get these false perceptions in your mind that you're being taken advantage of and no one's going to tell me what to do, blah, 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 blah. When in reality, then he is telling you what to do. Somebody is always telling us what to do, right? You are following somebody, even if it's yourself. And if you're following yourself, then you're following Satan because he's the one putting those ideas in your mind. We have to get in our mind, we are not creators. We were created. And if Yahweh took his breath away from us, we'd be dead in 2 or 3 minutes. So what he gives us is, he gives us free will. He gives us free choice to choose. Do we serve him or do we serve Satan? But that's your only 2 choices. You're not an Elohim. You don't have eternal life and immortality in you that you could do whatever you want to do. And that's the lie that Satan tries to give people, right? Even Christians. That there's an immortal soul. And you're going to live forever no matter what. It's just if you do things this way, it might be in a little less comfortable position. If you do things this way, maybe not. It's a lie. You don't have an immortal soul. The soul that sins, it will die. And that's the key that you have to realize. If you're walking by the Spirit, you won't have a spirit of covetousness. So yes, you do have free will. But like it says, I put before your life and death, choose life. You have to freely choose it of your own. 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5. 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5 says, "For though we live in earthly life, we do not serve worldly things," right? So, yeah, we're human beings. We have flesh and blood. We live in earthly life, but we don't serve worldly things because it will only bring you unhappiness, not happiness. "For the weapons of our warfare are not fleshly, but of the power of Yahweh to the demolition of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every false thing lifting itself up against the knowledge of Elohim, and bringing into captivity every thought into the obedience of Messiah." And if ever there was one of the commandments where we have to do this, it's coveting, because that's the one that is in the mind. That's all by thought. Even though every sin starts with thoughts, right? Not every thought is a sin. But coveting is a thought and is a sin, right? So that's what he says here. We have to bring into captivity every thought into the obedience of Messiah. Since coveting starts in mind, we need to take every thought into captivity. We need to control our environment. We need to control our environment. And like I said, many rich people are actually serving their money. Their money is not serving them. And that's why we have to have, the focus has to be on our blessings that we have, not on the wants that we don't have. Like it says, Yahweh always gives us what we need, not necessarily what we want, but certainly what we need. Philippians 4 and verse 4. Philippians 4 and verse 4. It says, "Rejoicing Yahweh always, again I say rejoice. Let your humility be known to all men, our master is at hand." So humility is the opposite of coveting. It's actually internalizing that I'm not going to have everything. And why should I? What does Yahweh owe me that every single thing I want in life I should have? I'm not Elohim, he is. And not everything that I want is actually good for me. Verse 10, "But I rejoiced in Elohim greatly that you have continued to care for me just as you have always cared, even though you yourselves have not had enough. Not that I speak as to need," this is the Apostle Paul speaking, "for I have learned to be content in whatever state I am in. And I know what it is to be poor, and I know what it is to be rich. I've gone through many things and experienced many things, both to be filled and to hunger, both to have plenty and to be in need. I can do all things through Messiah, the one giving me the strength." And I've said this many times. I can really relate to this because there's times where I'm coming home from a mission trip, and my flight is delayed for a day, and they give me for free a $500 hotel in the Hyatt Hotel with heated toilet and all the food you could eat and all this other stuff. And it's great, and I appreciate it, believe me. But then there's other times where I've slept on straw and in a third world person's home, and I can honestly say I had more comfort with the brethren in that third world home than I did in being by myself, in the $500 hotel. So I've seen it both ways, but Yahweh's blessing is in both of them. And you embrace it. Like I said, I embraced it the time that I was in the hotel, and I embraced it the time, many times I've been with the brethren. So the way to get rid of a covetous spirit is to be content in all things, like it says, and realize we don't deserve anything but death. That's what our actions in life have brought, is death. Every single person has sinned. Read Romans 3. I'm not going to go there now, but every single person has. Let's go to 1 Thessalonians 5 and verse 16. 1 Thessalonians 5 and verse 16, it says, "Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of Yahweh and Messiah Yeshua toward you." Rejoice always, in everything give thanks. Like I said, Romans 8:28, all things work for the good, even challenges. We have to accept it. We have to accept it because sometimes our greatest joy in life comes through those greatest challenges. At the end of that challenge, there's always a blessing. But we have to go through them because that's what changes us. That's what gives us character. That's what helps us to overcome. And without that, we wouldn't. Without that, we would have more of a covetous spirit. So, all things work to the good. We need to thank Yahweh for everything, not seeking more that he has not given us. Psalm 136. Psalm 136. 1 through 4, and I'll drop down to verse 23. Oh, give thanks to Yahweh, for he is good, and his mercy endures forever. Oh, give thanks to the Elohim of the Elohim, for his mercy endures forever. Oh, give thanks to the Master of masters, for his mercy endures forever. All great wonders come from him, for his mercy endures forever. Verse 23. Who remembered us in our lowest state, for his mercy endures forever, and has rescued us from our enemies, for his mercy endures forever. Who gives food to all flesh, for his mercy endures forever. Oh, give thanks to the Elohim of heaven, for his mercy endures forever. Praise Yahweh, for that Yahweh gives us his grace, and that's all we need in life. 2 Corinthians 12 and verse 7. One of the greatest things I think the Apostle Paul ever wrote. He wrote a lot of great things, but this one is really great. He says, this is where he's having some kind of trouble, and it believes to be an eye trouble. Maybe he was even blind after the road to Damascus, or almost blind, right? And it says, and by the superabundance of the revelations, that I not be made arrogant, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan, that he might buffet me, that I not be made haughty. And this seems to be a demon, maybe, even. He says, beyond this, I entreated our master 3 times that it depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient to you, for my power is made perfect in weakness, right? Because we're humans, we need that. We need to be humbled. And weakness humbles us. Therefore, I will rather gladly boast in my weaknesses, that the power of Messiah may rest upon me. Because of this, I am pleased in weaknesses, in insults, in dire needs, in persecutions, in distresses. For the sake of Messiah, for when I am physically weak, then I am spiritually strong. Wow, great scripture there that really brings our life in perspective. So, we shouldn't take it as negative things when these things happen, even when people are persecuting us. Because when we're being humbled, we're being strengthened. For when we are weak in the flesh, we are strong in the spirit. And that's why sometimes Yahweh allows sicknesses on us. Right? That's why sometimes he doesn't heal certain ailments that we might have, because we can glorify him more through that ailment and in that ailment than if he just healed us. Because then where would the glory be? If everyone was just healed automatically of everything. Last scripture is Matthew 6. Matthew 6. Skip around a little bit, start from 9 through 13, and then drop down to 19. Matthew 6, and this is the prayer that Yeshua taught his disciples. Matthew 6 and verse 9. It says, so then you should pray this way, Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, as it is in heaven, also on the earth. Give us the bread of our need this day, and forgive us our offenses, as we also have forgiven those who have offended us. And do not lead us into trial, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Wow. So isn't that kind of interesting? That we are not to pray for, well, he says, the way we pray, not for asking for things for next week and next month and 2 years from now, right? But praying for this day, the things we need for that day. Because beside that, we could be coveting when we're asking for things for next week and next year and the year after that. But in commercial Babylon, Satan wants to fear people into worrying. What will be in 20 years down the line? What will be in 40 years down the line? What happens, if I don't have the money? What happens if I don't have this? And you know what happens when you do that? When you're living in the tomorrow, you lose the blessing of today. And you know one thing? I know we said this. Yesterday's past. It's never coming back. So you don't want to live in yesterday, because you're going to have a miserable life if you're just regretting things that you can never change. And tomorrow hasn't come yet. And living today, what your tomorrow will be is what you make today. Because tomorrow is a rollover from today. So, like I said, it's not just about getting there. It's about enjoying the process. And in Satan's world, people focus on, sometimes for 40 years, they're focusing on their IRA, and they're focusing on this, and when I'm 70, and when I'm 80, and when I'm 90, I'm going to, have this and that. And most people never even make it there. and they lose out on today. Today you're alive. This minute you're alive. You're listening to this message somewhere. Focus on what you can do today. Focus on your blessings right now. And let tomorrow take care of itself. Tomorrow has enough problems of its own, as we see here. So we want to make sure we're not losing the blessing of today by coveting something of tomorrow. Drop down to verse 19. Verse 19. It says, do not treasure up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust cause to corrupt and where thieves dig through and steal. But treasure up for you where treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust cause to corrupt and where thieves do not dig through and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, right? What are your priorities in life? The priority is what you get done. If the priority is the work of Yahweh, wow, then you could think of thousands of blessings in your life. If your priority is on mammon, you might have other things. Verse 22, the lamp of the body is the eye. Then if your eye is pure, all your body is light. But if your eye is evil, all your body is dark. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one is able to serve two masters. He'll either hate the one and love the other, or cleave to the one and despise the other. You're not able to serve Yahweh and wealth, Yahweh and mammon, right? Coveting will get you nowhere. Because of this I say to you, do not be anxious for your soul, what you'll eat or what you'll drink, nor for your body, what you'll put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing, right? Observe the birds of the heaven, that they do not sow, nor do they reap, nor do they gather in barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Do you not rather excel them? But who of you, by being anxious, is able to add 1 cubit to his stature? And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They do not labor, nor do they spin. But I say to you, not even Solomon in all his glory was clothed as one of these, right? Or his temple. If Yahweh so enrobes the grass of the field, which is today and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, will he not much rather you, little faiths? Then do not be anxious, saying, what may we eat? Or what may we drink? Or what may clothe us? For after all these things the nations seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you have need of all these things. But seek first the kingdom of Yahweh and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Then do not be anxious for tomorrow will be anxious of itself. Sufficient to each day is its own trouble, right? We got enough things to worry about today. Why am I going to worry about something tomorrow that I might not even be alive? So, our focus should be on bearing fruit for the kingdom, outgoing concern for others, and not simply personal gain. And that's usually what covetous is, right? It's out for ourselves. Or lust of power or position, right? Not just coveting money or whatnot, but also power or position, greed, and all other covetous, idolatrous practices. We want to be thankful for what we have, right? Content for what we have, being happiness for what we have. Happiness is not wanting more, it's being satisfied with less. Yahweh has chosen what is best for us in our spiritual well-being. Romans 8:28. In faith, we must be content and satisfied in what he has chosen as our lot in life, as the test to prove our faithfulness to him. No covetous one will be in the kingdom. We got to get that through and know that each of us has to get rid of whatever covetous spirit we have. It is sin, it must be repented of. Must meditate on this and ask Yahweh to show us as it's the only commandment of only thought, right? The thought. If we are coveting, then we will never have a spirit of appreciation of all that Yahweh is doing in our life. So, a very important subject, and like the Apostle Paul said, for me, it's not burdensome to do this more than once, but for you, it is profitable. So I pray that you really meditate on this, listen to it more than once, and really get your mind, like I said, to change your focus from one of focusing on in a covetousness world of commercial Babylon, of what you want, to the kingdom of Yahweh, of everything you need that Yahweh has already given, and using those spiritual gifts he's giving you to bear fruit for his kingdom and to help other people, which brings happiness and contentment in life. Yahweh bless. Shabbat Shalom.